Greetings, music lovers. Rick Ferguson, rickfergusonmusic.com. Thank you for joining me here on my YouTube channel, and thank you for joining me in my third volume of Mozart, Salieri, and Beethoven, the Bermuda Triangle of music. This is so much fun, so thank you for going on this little ride with me. In this third installment, I would like to explore the relationship between Ludwig Beethoven and Antonio Salieri. And to do so really means that we're looking at Salieri's work, his commitment to his influence as a teacher, his legacy as a teacher, which was actually pretty significant. Liszt Meyerbeer worked with him, called Czerny worked with him, also then spent a good bit of time with Beethoven as well. So there are some cross relationships in play here. And you might remember a previous item that I mentioned was during any given week, Salieri would have been teaching up to 80 students, the vast majority of those without charging a fee. Apparently Salieri felt very, very strongly about his own mission, and given the fact that he had this incredible position and responsibility as the Hofkapellmeister in the Habsburg court at that time, apparently Salieri felt very strongly about being able to give back and continue to feed in and strengthen, and in whatever way or ways that he was positively able to influence music making, especially in Vienna, the latter part of the 18th century, first decade or more of the 19th century, he really wanted to do. Specific to Beethoven and Salieri, when Beethoven first arrived in Vienna in 1792, and that would have been just shy of Beethoven's 22nd birthday, Beethoven was there ostensibly to study composition with the great Joseph Haydn, who at that time was at the epitome of his compositional craft, celebrated all throughout Europe, and so who would not want to study with Haydn at that time? The only difficulty that Beethoven found was that he never saw Haydn. They never had any, their FaceTime was very, very limited, and so they really did not have the opportunity to create a deeper teacher-student, mentor-student relationship, although Beethoven continued for a period of time to refer to Haydn as his teacher, one of his main teachers. Actually, what Beethoven ended up doing was somewhat on the sly, seeking out other teachers. Two in particular seem to have a really big influence on Beethoven's development as a composer. And do keep in mind that Beethoven took his role as a student very seriously, and was at that time hungry, because he was known as such a formidable pianist. Beethoven was hungry really to develop and get on something of a fast track compositionally. So that was one of the main reasons why Beethoven spent a good bit of time really seeking out support in terms of good teaching. One, Johann Georg Albrechtsberger, was a teacher with whom Beethoven did a lot of work, counterpoint, musical analysis, studying musical style, even some a little bit of orchestration work, and worked in depth with Albrechtsberger for several years. As Beethoven was honing his compositional craft. The other, of course, was Salieri. And, Beethoven had what was what was going to be a very long-standing relationship with Salieri, studying aspects of vocal technique, how to write for the voice. That was always, apparently from Beethoven's letters at least, a source of concern for him, and not necessarily Beethoven's comfort zone as a composer, working with the voice. And also worked with Salieri on how one writes for the stage. And their relationship developed to the point where Beethoven continued to work fairly frequently with Salieri from 1793 all the way to 1802, and even after that period of time. And of course, by that time, Beethoven was Beethoven. And so Beethoven continued to consult with Salieri on various works, especially having to do with works for the stage, all the way until 1809. And that was around the time that Salieri really retired, whatever that meant for Salieri then. So Beethoven really considered Salieri to be a very valuable mentor, support, and Salieri seemed to be very accessible, very approachable, and really genuinely wanted to help. Incredible legacy of teaching. As one thank you, as one dedication, Beethoven wrote the set of 3 sonatas for violin and piano, his Opus 12, and I would like us to hear the first part of the first movement of the second of those sonatas in A major. Here we have one of my favorite duos, actually, Anna Sophie Mutter and Lambert Orchis, who are playing this at the Théâtre des Champs-Élysées in Paris, and it is just so much fun to hear them play this music. So do go and search them out. So let's listen to the first part of the first movement. I hope you enjoyed that. So that was one of a number of pieces that Beethoven dedicated. In a separate video, actually, I'm going to devote to one piece for the entire video, which is a set of variations for the piano, which were dedicated to Salieri and really not played nearly enough. So I'll delve into that in another video. Specific to studying works for the stage, Beethoven, of course, consulted with Salieri as Beethoven was working on his one and only opera, Fidelio, or at least the original version of Fidelio. This was a very painful process, I think, composing this opera. But some really beautiful music came from it. I would like us to hear just part of an aria. This is actually sung by the wonderful Barbara Bonney, and she is singing with conductor Nicholas Arnoncourt and the Chamber Orchestra of Europe. And this is the opera from Fidelio, Rick Schon. So enjoy. So, you know, this very long-standing relationship between Beethoven and Salieri, I think, really benefited them both, but perhaps Beethoven more, because, you know, he had a mentor, he had someone to whom he could go and really work out ideas. So this is great, and it's yet another example of the significance of Salieri in Viennese musical and cultural life, and the fact that Salieri really was very serious about playing a very positive role. So you could find Salieri at all different kinds of events, just helping out. As an example, did you know that Salieri played the pianoforte for the premiere performance in Vienna of Haydn's oratorio, The Creation, in 1798? Did you know that Salieri was directing the cannons and drums during the first performance of Beethoven's Big Battle Symphony, Wellington's Victory, which occurred in, I believe, December of 1813. So Salieri did not have a problem sort of being behind the scene, as it were, helping out. Salieri was a pivotal figure, an instrumental figure in the founding of the Vienna Gesellschaft der Musikfreunde, the Society of Friends of Music in Vienna in 1814 and 1815. And he took a huge administrative role in that, helping to get it off the ground. And he also helped then, through the Gesellschaft, to found a vocal conservatory in 1817, and then 2 years later in 1819, an instrumental conservatory to go with. So, you know, this was huge work on Salieri's part. One of the things that I would be very curious to see, because this book has been unpublished, was Salieri's book on vocal singing instruction. And it was written for amateurs, never been published, but apparently the neat thing about Salieri's book was that he wrote it in verse. And each stanza is apparently focusing on the four primary voice types. And so he wrote an entire book for really amateurs who wanted to learn and improve their own singing. So, you know, Salieri was someone who really thought about, I believe, the communal power of music, of art, and how important culture is to binding us all together. There's one more clip in terms of instructional music, as it were, that I would like to share. And this is, I think, the first 4 or 5 variations from actually the last work that Salieri composed. In 1815, he had already been retired for several years at this point. It is a set of 26 variations on the theme La Folia de Spagna. And this was a very popular theme to write variations on, in particular in the Baroque period, but it was just one of those tunes. And Salieri essentially created this incredible, because these are 26 variations, instructional guide to orchestration of the period. You know, so early part of the 19th century, this was a deep dive on Salieri's part into the effective use of the orchestra. And it's a fabulous book. It's actually, perhaps, in my opinion, Salieri's greatest instrumental composition, and it is so much fun to hear, especially, you know, his use of the harp and his use of percussion, and really sort of doing as much with the orchestra of the time as any composer would. So it's a wonderful study in terms of orchestration. So we will hear the London Mozart Players in a recording from 2001 conducted by Matthias Bammert, and this is the first portion of Salieri's 26 variations on the theme La Folia. Enjoy. Well, I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope that you will actually seek that entire performance out. It's really beautiful music, and it is so skillfully done. So, that is Salieri in a nutshell in terms of teaching, influence, legacy, just really an astounding body of work by a composer that we really, don't think a lot about anymore, but perhaps we should. So thank you for joining me. It's been an absolute pleasure to share this with you, and keep coming back for more. And you can always contact me if you have any other ideas through my website, rickfergusonmusic.com. I'm always happy to share. Bye-bye.